Identifying
The king of cakes. Chopper for the win.
G'day guys, welcome back to Cakes by Chopper. Today I'm sharing with you something from my childhood. This was my favorite ice cream treat as a kid, back in the 80s, so if you were around then you'd know who he is. Bubble Bill is an icon, a legend. I'm so happy to share this with you. Some of you won't even know who he is, but this is, as I said, an ice cream treat. It was so cool. This part of his nose on the ice cream was a bubblegum ball. So you got to eat the ice cream and then have a bit of chewy when you were finished. Chewy is chewing gum. So if you want to learn how to make this cake, stick around and I'll show you how to make it. Okay, so the first thing you're going to do is head over to the Cakes by Choppa Facebook page, print off your template. I've done two just for the safety of having one on the cake and one on the fondant. And you're going to cut out the shapes. First of all, I'm going to start with the stick, which I'm going to cut a little bit longer than needed because we're going to make this out of fondant. You can get a tongue depressor and use that, but I found the only medium-sized ones in my shop, so I've just went to make it with fondant. It's up to you, whichever you prefer. So once you've cut out your Bubble Bill shape, you can make two cakes and layer them just so you've got a nice shape, and you can make it as big as you want. Print the template to the size you want your actual cake. I'm going to save some money and patch this up to be a 3-layered cake because they're quite thin layers, but by all means up to you. If you do 2 layers, just make them thicker. If you want to do thin ones, just do 3 layers. You can just use your offcuts to patch up the bits you don't have, because you can see there's a lot of cake left on the sides in the scraps. So you can just cut the shape out and add it to it. Got my shape here, but it's missing this corner piece. I've cut that to fit in there perfectly. And that offcut lends itself nicely to be trimmed away to make that 3rd layer. So now you can see we've got our 3 layers of Bubble Bill. I've positioned where I want the main part, leaving room for the fondant that's going to go over the top. And then I've placed the other 2 beside. We're going to fill it with whatever flavoring you choose. I'm going to choose a nice healthy serve of ganache. As you can see, it's nice and soft because I put it in the microwave for about 10 seconds before using it. And once you've got a crumb coat on, you can pop it in the fridge to set and then go over it with a 2nd coat and you'll get a nice smooth finish because it'll be cooled down by the time your crumb coat has set. Now I'm going to place the cut one in the middle, making sure it lines up nicely. Then I'm going to place a little bit of ganache to glue in around that corner. Place that in, make sure there's no overhang. Then another helping of ganache. I can hear all the chocolate lovers out there going, more, put more on. Once you've given it that nice even layer, place your 3rd layer on, making sure it's lined up all around. And then it's time to crumb coat. I always describe the crumb coat as like buttering bread. You're just gently pushing the butter into it, not so much layering it. So now we've got the crumb coat done, we're going to pop that into the fridge for about 10 minutes, let that firm up, and then we'll come back and apply another layer just to give it those nice smooth edging and fill in any gaps that we've missed.
20 minutes later.
So now that's been chilled, what we're going to do is apply the 2nd coat. And as you can see, this is thickened up. Got a little bit of sweating on the cake, but it's all good. You can see when we go over and smooth this around, you're getting that nice flat edge. If it's too firm, what you're going to do is just put it back in the microwave for, I'd say 5 to 10 seconds. You don't want it too runny because it'll just melt the layer underneath. But you'll see it'll prevent it from pulling the chocolate off the cake, which is what you really don't want. So I've taken a bit of white fondant, added a drop of yellow and a drop of brown to try and get this, I guess, pine wood. That's the sort of color I'm after. Like think of a paddle pop stick because that's what we're making. So once you're happy with the color of your paddle pop stick fondant, what I'm going to do is take a rolling pin, roll that out fairly thick. Then I'll take 2 skewers and I'm going to lightly water them, just brush a little bit of water to make them stick. Then you can push them down. Now you want to try and embed them in as much as you can without going through to the bottom. Moisten up the top of the fondant. And push that down, and try not to push so hard that you see the sticks. I mean, it's not exactly the easiest technique, but you don't want it to be too visible. Now you can use that brush to go around, or your knife, and just make sure it's nice and smooth. Now if you want to get real fancy, you can put a couple of lines in it to make it look more like a paddle pop stick. So now that you're finished with your paddle pop stick, we have our cake ready to go. I've prepared some pink fondant, and I also cut the template out, and I took out the middle of his nose because we're going to use that for a guide to pop his nose in. So I've gently placed it on top, and I'm going to just mark out the rough circle where that should be, and then gently take that off because we don't need chocolate marks on that. Now using a knife, very carefully cut out a dip where that circle is, because we're going to semi-embed the gumball. I know I just said a gumball, but we're actually going to use a gobstopper. So I'm going to pop that in, push that down. So we'll push this aside, get our pink rolled out. You have to pay attention to the dimensions of the sides of the cake as you're going. Once that's ready to go, line it up with the bottom, and then lay that up over your cake. Make sure it goes high enough and leaving enough space for the top of his eyes where that joins his hat. Now taking my cutting tool, I'm going to go around and take that top layer of fondant off. You can just use a fluffy brush to go and even that up. Now take your template and cut out the part of his face that is pink. Now in this groove here at the side, you're going to put your cutting tool in, make a nice neat line, and then when it gets up, even that up to the template. I'm being very careful when I remove it because I don't want to rip the ganache off the cake. Now when I cut away from the bottom here, I'm leaving a couple of millimeters outside of the cake, so it's not cut straight to the edge, because what I want to do is tuck that in under to give it that 3D rounded look. So once you're happy with the look of his face, what we're going to do is take our chocolate fondant. This is a dark chocolate fondant that I added a little bit of vanilla to, and we're going to roll that out. We're going to roll the fondant back over itself, bring it up, making sure there's plenty to go around, laying it on the cake. I know I said at the start that this is a very easy cake. This is the tricky part. You've got to get the fondant level to where his face was, and then quickly trim that away. If you're worried about your edges being a bit rough, use your knife to push in between and create that nice smooth edge, and then just gently fold the flap over and it'll neaten up that edge straight away. I've got a little bit of chocolate on here, but I can remove that with a little bit of water and paper towel. Same trick as before, cut a little bit away from the cake, because it's always better to take a little bit than too much, because if you take too much, you have to try and work it down, and it's a pain. And that just folds under ever so neatly. So I rolled out a little bit of yellow fondant, and I'm going to use the circle cutter tip to cut out his eyes. Just go 1, Gently using a brush to tap that out. 2. Now I know what you're thinking, Chopper, these aren't round eyes. So what we're going to do is just gently use our fingers to make them into the oval. Got food dye stuck under my nails and it doesn't look too nice. So if you ever wonder why I paint my nails in my video, that's why. Okay, so using the cutter again, I'm going to take out the corner pieces of his eyes, making sure it's on the template and you get it right. At this stage, it's best to pick them up with the little knife or whatever tool you have. And we're going to place them on. So to make that band go all the way, I'm going to roll a snake. The best way to get a nice even snake is use your fondant smoother. Then I'm going to, in one motion, flatten that out. Whoa, is there one motion and I didn't do that. So just lay the band across the top, trim it off at the edge and give it a smooth over. And you've got his band. To make his mustache, I'm just gonna roll an oval. Make sure it's got no imperfections in the top. Flatten that out and then just gently bend it down and around with my thumb. Place it on the template. Now I can just use my finger and a brush to smooth that. Then I can cut out the shape of his nose. What I'm going to do here is use a little bit of gel food dye and a little bit of liquid. And then I'm going to paint that on just very carefully and let the sugars do the work. Ideally I could have got a green gobstopper, but this was all that was available. I'm being careful not to put on too much so it doesn't run. I've changed my mind here. Where I've put on his bullet hole, I'm going to take that off. Then I'm going to use the circle cutter. Carefully remove that fondant. And I'm going to flatten out the little circle of white and place that in the middle. I used a tool earlier to put a little wood grade in this fondant before it's set. What I'm going to do is put a little bit of brown dye on this and just help enhance that. The little bit goes a very long way. So as you can see here, I'm just smearing that all the way around, helping to bring out that wood grain. This is quite firm now, so I'm going to cut a little slit into here and just leverage it up and down a little bit, and ever so gently push that in. Try and use the sticks as much as you can. Okay, so now I'm happy with the finished look. I give him a steam. This will give it that nice glossy finish. Gonna be careful not to steam too much of one area. So there we go, guys. There is Bubble-O Bill, which was my favorite ice cream as a kid. I used to have them at Auntie Bev's all the time. Bit of nostalgia for me. Any Aussie would know he's an icon. If you're an international friend, then you've got no idea what this is, and I'm sorry, we'll be back to regular content soon. I just had to do Bubble-O Bill. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Tell me what you'd like me to cake next, and I'll see you next time. Bye, guys.